Everyone, welcome to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. Thank you for joining us here on a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Should have quite a lively topic today. Plenty of audience participation as we go through this, because we'll be talking about why you don't like popular watches. You're not crazy. So we've got a few ideas, but definitely let us know your unpopular opinions in the comment section. If there's a watch that you think everybody else likes and you're just like, I do not get this watch, let us know in the comment section as we go through this. But before we dive in, let's do a wristwatch check. Pete, the triumphant return. Pete.
Okay, I am wearing can you see that? No.
Oh, that's a bit of a square number.
Hang on 1 second.
Beautiful.
Tag Monaco. Caliber 11?
I think so, yeah. I don't know. I don't really track those, but yeah.
I think it is with the crown on the left, yeah.
Yeah. The watch that Steve McQueen wore in one film and then a tag dined out on it for the next 40 years.
Could have been worse. He could have actually not worn it, worn something else, but then just told everyone he wore a Monaco.
Yeah, he had like a hand heart, didn't he? And a hand heart he was famous for wearing. And a day, I think.
And what's the difference from that and Omega dining out on the moon on the Speedmaster moonwatch since 1969?
Yeah,
you want that should be our merch T-shirt. Dining out on the moon watch
since 1969.
Absolutely.
I think that reminds me of a quote I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ronnie Woods said something like rock and roll helping average looking men date supermodels since 1955.
Or Ronnie Wood. Hey, Braymont, thanks for all the money.
Yeah. Or Ronnie Wood. Hey, Sharpies make good tools.
On watch dials.
On watch dials. Anyway, sorry, before we get in there, Patrick, what are you wearing?
I'm rocking some vintage today, or at least neo-vintage. I've got my Grand Seiko tungsten bezeled weird quartz watch, which look at the slow sweep of that seconds. It needs a battery.
Oh yeah, it's skipping 2 seconds.
Yep. So I need to go to the AD and go get a new battery for it.
But it's not a Grand. Is it a Grand Seiko?
It's a Grand Seiko.
Oh wow, okay. Oh nice. I like that with the old gold, bit of the old gold and silver together.
Yeah, an old man watch for a guy with an old man beard today.
Men, just comb it through. Anyway, Mark, what are you wearing?
Well, we started with Ronnie Wood, but let's go to heavy metal. This is the Omega Seamaster GMT with its relatively new adjustable clasp. So I weighed it again, 233 grams and 17 millimeters high. It's a perfect heavy metal watch.
And that's a chronograph GMT as well, Mark, is it?
It is, yeah.
Right.
Are they screw down pushers?
No, they aren't. No, they aren't.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Well,
Pete's pet peeve, screw down pushers.
As he sneakily checks, they're not screw down pushers. No, they're not screw down pushers.
Wow. I'm reviewing a Phoebus Leviathan, which is like their bigger watch, and that's 188 grams. Wowzers. So that's
so like 44.25 millimeters diameter. I think it's 17.8 millimeters high. So definitely on the heavy metal end.
Thomas, welcome back. What are you wearing?
I'm wearing my MB&F Moon Swatch. Which is the MB&F Mad One, Lucky Clover. So this is the MB&F Moon Swatch equivalent. It's a cheap MB&F. If you can't afford $150,000, you buy one of these for $3,000. So it's got the nice spinning fidget spinner on top, so that's what I'm wearing today.
I wonder how many they sell of those versus the actual, the proper ones. It'd be quite interesting to look at. Okay, I am wearing a Unimatic, so I'm wearing a blue Unimatic titanium watch. I'm not sure if I'm going to review this on the channel. I reviewed another Unimatic, and I've got that new Unimatic with the Seiko movement ready to review. And I've also got a Casio Pro Trek with like a very interesting strap that is, so this will be out soon this week. I've got a ton of watches to review. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, because I'll be issuing a load of content. I've got an interview tomorrow as well with Jack Mason. Jack Mason have got a new watch out, which is awesome. So
great.
Do a little plug. Anybody else got anything to plug? New books or anything? New singles, music? Oh, Russell. Hey, Russell, if you want to join, I know you usually have you're looking after your kids on a Sunday night, but if you want to join, just send us a message. Okay, so topic is why you don't like popular watches. You're not crazy. So let us know if there's any watches that you guys like that you are not crazy about. But Pete, this was kind of your idea. Do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, I'm kind of glad about the composition of the panel today, because I think I'm about to upset at least one or two people that aren't here. But I feel like Mr. Magato from what is it? Zoolander. Every time I see the coverage of a new Tudor, I see Tudor and I just feel like I'm on crazy pills. They're just another Rolex homage brand. If any other brand tried what they did, they would be laughed out of like serious watch consideration. They are clearly beholden to their big brother, and yet everyone runs around and say they're a brand on their own. They're standing on their own 2 feet. Look, here's another two-tone GMT master exactly like the old Rolex, but it's not at all in any way like Rolex. I feel like I'm on crazy pills every time I hear people talk about Tudor.
Really? How do you feel about the aspect that they're the only brand that do the revivals of old Rolex, whereas Rolex look forward? I mean, I guess that's still that being Rolex. I guess that's still that being Rolex, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, I just see them as a sad, slightly less talented little brother touring the pub circuit, playing Big Brother's, greatest hits.
Or Mick Schumacher trying to get back into Formula One on the basis of his last name.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, not good enough.
Well, Tudor, Tudor do a lot of experimentation, don't they? They've obviously invested in that Kinesi to create different movements. There's something that that's
right.
Really
they've invested in Kinesi, and they've made a 3-hander and a GMT.
Yeah.
And everybody else seems to be running away from Kinesi.
Is that right? Oh, don't say anything controversial. Don't get me sued. But I haven't got media insurance. But is that true, Mark? Is that something you heard on the grapevine, or is that?
You don't need to look at the grapevine. Weren't they supposed to be a Kinesi partnership with Breitling? That doesn't seem to be happening now. Wasn't there look at the watches or the watch brands that were supposed to be using Kinesi movements, and I think it's only Norcane and Tudor left now. So there's something funky happening with Kinesi, but I don't know what.
I think what it is they only make a very limited number of their movements available to, let's call it, partners. So I'm terrible with reference numbers, but basically Tudor make 2 versions of their 3-hander, a big version and a small version. The one that's in the original, the classic black base is significantly bigger and significantly thicker. And then there's the thinner version that they put and smaller version that goes in the 54 and 58. They don't make the smaller version available to customers. So you'll notice that you can't put, if you're a customer, you can't put a Kinesi movement into anything smaller than about 40 millimeters, and it won't be any thinner than 13 or 14 millimeters. And since everyone's kind of moved away from that style of watch, and Kinesi won't make the movement from the Black Bay 54 or 58 available, you kind of have to step away from them.
Yeah, interesting. We've got a few comments come through as you'd expected. Let's just go through the order. Here's one that's not Tudor related, but KB Lake is asking, I'm looking at CWC, should I get matte or polished? You should definitely get matte. I think a few other people have said that. Also, if you're interested in British military watches, check out Elliot Brown as well. Okay, so let's have a look. So
and KB Lake, I might be the only person who got your MotoGP reference. But yes, you're quite right. That is a great example. Alex Marquez is not the rider his brother is not the rider his 8 times world champion brother is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so So Tudor are the shield that protects the crown. That is exactly how Rolex view them and have been hugely successful at that.
And that makes them terrible. They are Prince Harry. They are there not on their own right. They don't exist for their own benefit. They exist for the benefit of someone else. You loved your older son, so you had another one, so you had a spare set of kidneys. That's Tudor.
Oh
dear. Russell save us. Okay. So Russell says, certainly milking that Black Bay chrono. It's so fat and chunky. If Paul Newman's wife gave him one of those for his birthday, he'd tell her to get her money back.
Oh
dear. Actually, I know somebody who's got that Black Bay chrono. Somebody at work, JR. Shout out to JR. Sorry. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so Brassic Time says Tudor Rolex tribute band for those who can't get Oasis tickets. Okay, let's have a look. And then Chrono Craze says Tudor and Christopher Ward, great watches, for example, they are just too popular. It becomes a bit of a cliche and turn off. I feel like I'd rather get something else at the time. Oh, you had to throw what have Christopher Ward done?
yeah, I must say I can get on board with that comment about Christopher Ward. I'm not a Christopher Ward fanboy, and I don't hate to upset you. And they do good stuff. They've been doing some good stuff, but I can't get on board with Christopher Ward, to be honest with you. I think there's a load of other stuff out there that is much more preferable for me. I mean, they've come along in leaps and bounds. They've blossomed. They've got better cases. They've brought on designers. They had the Bel Canto was a bit of a one-off for them, I thought.
Thomas, yeah, this.
Thomas, I got a question.
They're starting to do good things now. You know, they got the titanium case in Lumiere, and they've got the. Yeah, go, Patrick. Sorry.
Well, part of it's just I want to get Pete's take on a hot take here, because I think Chrono and Thomas, I think you guys are dead on, and Pete just gave a giant poo on top of Tudor for just being the copycat brand, and so my question kind of is, I mean, isn't Christopher Ward kind of a copycat brand?
They were. They started
yes
off as
and
a
no.
homage brand. Yeah.
So yes, I want to know, Pete, what do you think about Christopher Ward's push up?
Christopher Ward is slightly different. I don't feel like I'm taking crazy pills with Christopher Ward, because I don't feel, but I do understand the appeal. So Christopher Ward are positioned as a value brand. They proudly tell people that they're not a luxury watch. That's sort of their thing. They're happy comparing themselves to other watches and saying, hey, we're cheaper in their advertising. And that is a massive turn off for me. So just the way they position themselves as a kind of, from my perspective, white goods provider of watches doesn't really resonate with me. So I don't like them. But that said, yeah, Christopher Ward has their watch that looks like an MB&F. They have their watch that looks like a Rolex. They have their watch that looks like a Blancpain. They have their watch that looks like a Chapek. I don't know what a Christopher Ward watch looks like.
Nailed it. That's exactly what I thought you'd say. So,
Mark, come on. We're gonna have to fight this battle together here. I think
I
Christopher
kind
Ward
of
is steering
agree.
the
I
ship for
kind
the
of
value.
disagree with this. Christopher Ward were certainly called a homage brand in the pejorative sense, and to a point, that's true. They did themselves no favors just after the launch of the Bel Canto, coming out with the Aquitaine, which was clearly a rip-off of a Blanc Pain.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Can't argue with that. The Sealander is more of a homage in the true sense of the word, as it pays respect to. So, we're coming into the use of homage as pejorative or to pay respect to, which isn't, I know everybody on this panel gets it, but a lot of people, a lot of the comments in forums don't, even in the Christopher Ward forum, don't get the difference. Have they established their own brand identity? It's hard to establish a brand identity when you're only 20 years old. You try things and you see what sticks. And I think they found a formula with the, Trident Pro 300 that is a homage to the previous generation Seamaster. But that's in the true sense. Are they truly original? No, but I think they're getting there. And I think they're getting there with a whole bunch of good stuff as well. Some watches I don't like. I haven't bought a Christopher Ward in 2 years. So after that tells you something. And I'm a fanboy.
Yeah. So actually, Watch Addict says Adrian Barker, the great, always comparing CW and Tudor, did it recently with the Lumiere. He did it in a really funny way. I know the guys at Christopher Ward quite well, and I was kind of teasing them about the way that Adrian kind of compared the two together, because it's clear that Adrian, he does work a lot with Tudor, doesn't he? So he was like, the Lumiere, is it a Pelagos killer? And then his first line was like, no, it isn't. But anyway, let's just review the watch.
Well, that was
so it's kind of like shoehorn Tudor in there.
At least Adrian is almost honest about his using thumbnails and titles to get the algorithm to work for him, because that was basically I've got nothing else to say, but I've got this watch and I really want the algorithm to push my views. So that's what he did. It was all, he could have just put that, just be honest, I'm doing this to push the algorithm.
Yeah, because I mean, I know a couple of people have said a Pelagos killer, but to be honest, it's not, the two watches are not alike.
Well, they're not even aimed at the same audience.
No, of course not. Okay, so let's have a look at any other comments. Well, before we swiftly move on from any more Christopher Ward mudslinging, my favorite brand, one of them. Any final thoughts on the Tudor before we move on?
Well, let me say one thing to defend my mudslinging, because it's not really mudslinging. I think Christopher Ward makes a great product and they bring it at a great price point. And I think Tudor makes a great product at their price point. And that's what I think those are. But to Pete's defense, do any of them really inspire me or make me want to buy their watches? The answer is a very solid no. And that's for me.
Fair.
And obviously for other people, go for it. But as I said, for me, I need something that inspires a little bit more originality in both brands to make me say, wow, that's amazing. Here's my money.
Yeah.
And I think if we were honest, that would apply to all of us. There are, and that's kind of the crazy pills argument, isn't it? People go nuts over brand X, and 4 out of 5 on the panel might not see it. And 99 people out of 100 who are just going, oh, this is in the press. Therefore I've got to like it. And it's like, hold on a minute. So it's okay not to like a brand that somebody else likes. I mean, that should be normality. Yeah. You can be polite but not like it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so let's have a look here. Any other things? Yes. So Chris J did say that so many watches do look alike today, and I think people are following a lot of tried and true formula, aren't they? Especially like a small independent brand that needs to shift product. I mean, like Jody's, Jody's new watch, the new dress watch, obviously, has his flair on it, but it is a familiar look to it. But I think a lot of brands have to get established, don't they? With, they can't go crazy straight out the door.
I suppose if you look at Studio Underdog, that would say you can if you're good enough.
Okay, well, let's see. Well, that's interesting. Isn't it? I mean, the Studio Underdog, the dials are unique, aren't they? But the case
Yeah.
and everything was,
That's the dials of their identity, aren't they? Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, here's okay. Yeah, I don't. Okay, so let's have a look at some more comments as we go down here. Oh yeah, so Chrono Craze just agreeing with you. Nothing wrong with them. This is probably to agree with Patrick, isn't it? Nothing wrong with technically or design wise. I just don't get my juices going anymore. I think there are also too many of the same kind of watches now. General market oversaturation. What do we think about that?
As a collector of vintage watches, I think people today have no idea how varied watches are. I mean, if you go back to like the 1950s or something, every watch, without the name on the dial, was very hard to pick from any other watch. They were all very, very similar. It is probably true that during the 70s and 80s, there was a bit of an explosion of style, and a lot of brands really, took branding on board and stamped their own, put their own imprint on things. But go back to the 1950s and first off, there was not really even genres of watches. There were just watches, and they all pretty much just looked the same. So I think it's kind of a missing that this is a moment in history that's actually pretty good if you go back more than a couple of years. I think the other thing too is that the watches that we get presented are all pretty safe. Tudors, get presented a lot to us, and they're a fairly safe, familiar design. Not many of the more outlandish, more interesting, more exciting watches get coverage because they don't get clicks. And so I think there are great watches out there that you just don't see because it's not in a click-driven environment. It's not worth people covering them.
And
Yeah.
we also don't necessarily see the breadth of the range that a manufacturer like Tudor might have. All of our coverage is on the Black Bay.
So you're telling me that if you showed me more of those absolutely execrable Royals, I might change my tune?
No, to be fair, no. But the point would be that if we're going to talk about, we're shown a limited range of safe watches. That's
absolutely
just
true.
part of that Venn diagram of the whole sphere. So, I mean, personally, I wouldn't want to upset anybody by showing them a Royal, but
well, it's even the truth for us YouTube watch reviewers. Is the joke is the kiss of death is reviewing a watch that you really like. That you found. Like I've done that before, where I thought I found like a quirky watch and you review it, and like nobody's interested in seeing it. So I always go back to that Timex data link, the one that actually went into space. I've done a couple of videos on it now, and it's like one that I'm ever interested in it. Okay, so so David Crandall says, maybe this is a response to you, Mark, was what does popular mean to you? Please define it for us.
Ooh.
Wow. Ooh, yeah.
That's a very good question. There are different measures of popularity. So let's talk about what we've just said. There are watches that get clicks. So any watch reviewer knows full well that if you put Rolex or Tudor in the title, it will get more clicks than the same review without those two words in the title.
Yeah.
So there are brands that, through the power of their marketing, have become popular in the public sense. Yeah. Then you can look at another definition of popular would be volume of sales by price. So if you're in the $10 to $20 region, a popular watch is a Casio. It's a G-Shock of some sort. Then you might look and say, well, what is a popular watch in another price category. And then you could say, well, a popular watch is a watch that people like but don't buy because they can't afford it. I don't know that there's one definition of popular, but normally you would say popular is something that a large number of people like.
Yeah,
I would say there's also the hype. A lot of people consider popular being the hype train, don't they?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is
good point.
Rolex, Royal Oak, AP Royal Oak, Patek Nautilus, etc., etc.
Hublot.
Steel sports watches, blah blah blah. And people forget a lot about the independence. They forget about dress watches. They forget about all sorts of other stuff that's out there. And popular, I don't know. It can be a personal thing. It can be if you're talking about personal things, what's popular for you. That's one thing, but popular is driven by the media a lot of the time, and by the forums, and by YouTube, and etc. And it's depending on which channels you're watching, YouTube channels. It's hype, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, can you think of it? We should think of some examples, shouldn't we, of a watch that we think is just exists within a hype vacuum. Like, I think Seiko SKX. I mean, it's an old one now, but I think that exists.
Oh yeah,
in a hype vacuum. It wasn't that good a watch when you actually had it.
No, I think that's a fantastic example of a watch which was far more popular than it actually deserved to be.
Yes,
and it's a real accident of history. It's a watch that sort of was available to people as the internet was winding up, as people were able to Instagram and those sorts of things were coming online. So the watch hobby was expanding. People were getting into the idea of watches. They wanted to talk about it. And here was $100 watch that seemed to be okay for them. And then a little bit like a G-Shock, it just became everyone's kind of darling watch. But at the bottom of all that, it's not a particularly good watch. Sticking with Seiko, and I'm a Seiko fan, I do not get the Alpinist. I do not understand the attraction for that. That is one monkey butt ugly watch.
The stained glass hands. I never got that. I mean, the SKX as well, you could mod it. It always reminded me of for our UK viewers, like the Vauxhall Nova. Like when I grew up in the 90s, everybody bought a Vauxhall Nova because you could like customize it quite easily, even though it's the actual base car wasn't.
Well, that was just customizing it before crashing it. Because the next thing that happened to a Vauxhall Nova is the 17-year-old kids drove it through a hedge and turned it upside down.
It did have those jumpers on the side, didn't it, to try and help you ricochet off things. It did have like a bulbous side parts in it. So yeah, can anyone think of another one? Thomas, you brought it up. Any watch that you think exists in a hype bubble yeah? Go on.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Thomas.
Mike. No, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to give people the example of a brand called Furlan Marry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The chronographs.
Well, they're
the brand.
They are for the whole brand. They must have been spending a lot of money over the last 2 to 3 years for the amount of media they've been getting for really what are just photocopies of the of the Patek Philippe catalogue from the 1950s. But you can tell that their popularity or hype popularity is such that I think they got through into the nominations into GPHD this year.
They did.
In the challenge category.
Disco Verde, yeah.
And let's face it, I have a lot of time and respect for GPHD in the way that they try to organize them. They publish their rules. They're very clear what the categories mean. And then you have the Academy and the people who vote, a lot of whom run media organizations that take the money.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence that Tudor have won almost every year they've entered, for example.
Yeah, I think Furlan Marry, it was funny actually. I always felt odd about Furlan Murray. I never felt comfortable, and I couldn't find a word to describe how I felt. But then in a completely different area, I came across the term astroturfing. I don't know if anyone's heard that. It's actually a term used in politics, and it's when you use marketing money to fake grassroots support, hence astroturf, fake grassroots. And for me, the moment came where I really found myself uncomfortable about Furlan Murray is when, they proudly talk about their first Kickstarter sold out in 35 seconds. And I can't help but think they were sitting there with $500,000 of investor money on the side, waiting for the Kickstarters to start so that they could immediately tip that money in and make us think that they've got grand, sort of grassroots support. I just feel like it's a complete marketing creature, this brand. And if you sort of scratch the surface, I can't help but feel that there are some very well-heeled collectors and perhaps magazine proprietors who perhaps own shares in Furlan Murray.
Yeah, I buy that. It's the equivalent of in U.S. politics when a politician writes a book and magically it becomes on the New York bestseller list next week.
Yeah,
and it's because
they
their
do it
own
through
party went
pre-orders,
out and
don't
bought
they?
all the books.
Yeah, I looked into that once. They do it through pre-orders, don't they? They have stores pre-order certain amounts of stock of it, but on like a sale or return type basis, I think, and then they can return. They can take a larger number because they're not like financially committed to actually selling them.
Or you can go to a promotional. You can go to like a third-party hire company, and from them you can hire 1,000 people who will write the letter that you want them to write and sign it and send it to a politician.
Yeah,
that's
I mean, we're not saying that Furlan. That's it was his speculation. We're not besmirching Furlan Murray's.
Yeah, but it just doesn't. One of the things I'd say is they sell a lot. They're really popular. Apparently, serious collectors love them. I've never seen someone wear one.
I saw one
I've
once.
never seen one. If you're talking about pop, I was thinking of popular. I see more massive Invictas out. Maybe it's because I live in Florida, but maybe I see more of the massive
because you live in Florida
on people's wrists than any other watch. Like, it is wild. That there's like a gold one that looks like it's almost got like bullets, like big gold like bullets in the strap. I see that one all the time. Yeah, it's I think maybe it's location specific. Like if we lived in Monaco, I don't know how many Invictas you would see out in the wild, but. Okay, so let's have a look other comments that we've got coming through here. So I think new to the channel, the man with 3 H's. Thank you for joining. A watch is supposed to be an extension of your unique personal style. How can everyone's personal style be a Black Submariner? Goes to show how most people want us just to fit in. A sad state, really. I mean, there's a certain thing to that, isn't there? I mean, that Submariner, I guess it got famous because it was a solid watch, wasn't it? I mean, it did actually go diving with the Comex divers.
Yeah, and I think you've got to sort of say both things that are true at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is sort of watches are a way of expressing your personality, but they're also a way of showing that you're part of an in-group, and so that's. You're sort of balancing those two things. I think Rolex is positioned to be a symbol to show that you are part of an in-group. That's the point of Rolex. That's all their advertising is showing. I mean, it's funny. If I said to you that Rolex isn't a watch company, that they're a luxury goods company, you would probably think I'm a hater who doesn't like the brand. I'm actually quoting their CEO.
They're jewelry. They're jewelry, aren't they? They're
then again,
jewelry.
Peter, you are. Then again, Pete, you are a hater who doesn't like the brand. But you are also quoting the CEO.
Well, I'm also quoting the CEO.
The two things.
The two things are not mutually exclusive.
Yes, Brassic Time says a black sub is the Audi A3 of watches, ideal for someone happy to spend more than it's really worth as part of a uniform without investing any thought into the purchase.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The take I have to say on that though, which goes back to even just the definition we had earlier with hype, Rolex, because of the hype, because of the popularity, it's a safe always purchase because if you can buy one, you're not really losing money in it. And sadly, I think
Yeah.
the I hate the word, but the investment of it's
Exactly,
safe.
Patrick.
And so people don't worry about it. I mean, I buy a watch and it may lose 40% after I buy it because I bought it because I like it and I don't care what it's going to be worth. I'm not really planning on selling it, but there's a whole market out there who doesn't really give a damn about it. They just want the prestige of the name, which goes to Pete's idea of it being a luxury company and not a watch company. But they also feel safe that they know they're not going to really lose any skin in the game if they change their mind or if they upgrade.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Unless,
many.
unless they bought a lady Datejust, then they're in for big losses.
Mhm.
There's so many people in the post-COVID days got into that investment world, didn't they? Where they thought that watches were investments, and it was Rolex, it was Audemars Piguet, Royal Oak. The amount of times I've heard that people say the Royal Oak is the perfect watch, and it's these people talking from an investment standpoint. Saying, "Oh, it's your money is safe. It will go up. It will go up. If you can get on the wait list and get a Royal Oak, that's your target for watch collecting, and it grates me. It's just I hate it.
Yeah, let's. No, a good point. So let's. I don't think I can answer this one. Maybe Mark or Pete, who doesn't, or maybe Thomas, that doesn't traditionally do reviews on YouTube. But popular watches in my context equals 8+ YouTube channels that cover the exact same watch and brands repeatedly. They become a spreadsheet template for a must-buy, whatever Venn diagram overlap area.
I think it's true in that people kind of, and this is as a very lazy YouTuber who couldn't be bothered keeping spreadsheets, can't even be bothered putting out a video in 6 months. But I think Chrono's right in that a lot of YouTubers kind of find the thing that works. We spoke before about, Adrian is quite open about his clickbaity SEO optimization. People have learned, you've discussed about how you found that it's not really worth your while necessarily to cover a lot of micro brands because people just don't watch them anymore.
Yeah.
So I think there is, you know what? It's not YouTube's fault. It's the viewer's fault. I'm going to be like that.
Like the Star Wars, the people who are defending the Star Wars TV shows that have failed. Like it's
no.
the fans.
I would say it's the fans that have failed. People argue that they want to see more variety, but they never click on videos that aren't down this very narrow path. And so, if you want more variety, click on things that you wouldn't normally click on. If you only click on things that have Rolex and Tudor in the title, then it's all your fault.
And I think there's another side to this as well. If you're thinking of in a given week, you suddenly start seeing 10 YouTube channels all covering the same watch. Each of these brands has a marketing department.
Oh, yeah.
Each of these brands knows for their target segment, which bunch of us they want to sell their watch to. They know which channels are going to be watched, and they know which websites to put content on, and they're going to scattergun it. And the limit is how big their budget is for the marketing of that watch at launch.
Yeah.
So if you see 10 channels covering a given watch, it's because they've gone out and looked at which YouTube channels and websites are likely to, will take the money to cover it, and then we'll do that. So the brands are very careful about who they pick, And since we, they get metrics on how many people get views and how many people get comments, the brands are going to pick the websites that the customer watches and scattergun them.
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts on this one. I'll kind of go through them logically. Everyone's right. Like, if you, I now have to, in order to get views on my content, I now have to review popular watches. Whether I always review watches I like. I wouldn't just take in a watch because it's popular that I didn't like. So I do. So that's why I'm kind of doing a lot of like Citizen, Christopher Ward, Casios and stuff like that, because I like them, but also they're popular. It's very hard when you're starting out in YouTube to get views on a video. In fact, Todd, who's not on today, a couple of weeks ago, I was chatting to him about doing a YouTube, did a YouTube review. I can't remember which watch it was, and it didn't get a lot of views. And he said to me, "Oh, don't worry about it. You just do it because you enjoy doing it." And I was thought to myself, I actually don't enjoy like spending a lot of time doing a review and then nobody watches it. So Pete's right. You're coerced by the watches, not coerced. You're directed by the watches that you can get access to, and admittedly, that's some of the larger brands that are able to. I mean, I never take money for reviews, but it is the larger brands that are able to send you watches. So that's you're having to review basically what you can get. I don't have a huge watch collection myself, and then also you're having to make sure that it's content that people want to see. That you are because you're constantly having to feed the YouTube algorithm in that respect, and oftentimes. Just to counter this, Pete, you mentioned about micro brands. I reply to micro brands almost every single week. If I don't think I can get the views on it, I'll say, look, the only way that the best way for you to promote this is to engage Jody at Just One More Watch. I honestly think he is the only one that not only does an excellent job of reviewing micro brands, but the only one that can actually get views because he is the draw. That people are like, oh, what's Jody? What's the watch is almost secondary. He is the draw because he does such a good job. So I actually reply back. So yeah, you are basically you're causing the watch to be popular because you're getting watches that you think might be popular, and and a lot of people are making content on the same watch. So yeah, it's like a not a vicious circle, but it's certainly a
just going off on a tangent on that sort of popularity topic you're talking about. P was saying that can we get excited by a watch that we can never own? They appreciate 100K watches, but can we love them as much the same way as say a 10K watch? And they just seem to be remote and made for someone else. What do we think about that? And I mean, I can totally get in love with independent watches, say Urworks and fantasy watches, Urworks, MB&Fs, Bernard Lederer, Vutelanens, stuff like that. Yeah. Fantasy watches, I can love them as much as the watches I own. And, I go to watch shows and I see them and I hold them and I try them on, and even though they're totally out of my league price wise, I find that I can really live in a dream world of admiring them more than and almost living in a fantasy world of wanting them to be on my wrist, more than I can't, because even though I can't afford them, I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let the rest of the panel do that. I mean, mine, I for an expensive watch, I can admire it if it's got something technically on it, but I don't know how. Some watches I think are just like a rich man's folly. Some of the watches I'm like, oh, that's just like, what's the point of doing that? Like, it's just like, if you've got the money, you just would spend it on something like that. There's no it's not moving horology forward. But I don't know, Pete, this was kind of your idea. What was your?
Actually, it came from a Worn and Wound article that one of the Zacks wrote recently, talking about how he was disappointed with the community's response to the Moser Studio Underdog mashup, and he made the point in there that you don't have to own every watch, that you can appreciate a watch that that you will never be able to own and afford. And I find myself reading that, sort of nodding along, but then at the same time saying, I can appreciate it, but I can't love it. I can't get emotionally involved in it. I can watch Premier League soccer and I can appreciate that it's great, but I don't give a shit about any of the players or the teams or who wins. I don't care. I've got no investment in it. Whereas I'll go watch my local football competition where my 13-year-old nephew plays, and I will cheer on the Aberfeldy Saints like really passionately because I'm invested in that. And that's what I feel like when I look at like super high-end watches. I feel like this is a show put on for different people using metrics and measures I don't really understand or don't really care about. And I can appreciate it. I can look at it and say, that is a, well done, golf clap, good job. And I know intellectually what they're aiming for, so I can say this thing's better than that thing. But does it get my juices flowing? Does it make me care? No, it's just, this is for someone else.
Yeah, I think for me, they've got to be at least the illusion, the theatre that they might be obtainable for me. Like, I like that titanium Yachtmaster, that Rolex one. And I think in my mind, I might be able to afford it one time because it's not like it's $30,000 or anything.
That's right. Yeah, so I think there, and it's an interesting example of there's a watch which, because you think it could be in your swim lane, you become much more interested in than someone who's, not. How can someone not be invested in Premier League football? Why would I care?
Very easily, Premier League football, boring.
It is.
Why
would I care?
Boring.
Yeah, a vanity project between oligarchs and state-funded wealth funds.
Hey, well, I'm invested in Championship football, so I'm a league below that. So,
well, on the topic and point, I've got two mean things to say because that's the way I come. And one, when watches get too expensive, they just piss me off because I just think it's silly. I mean, when you're talking $100,000, lie to me all you want. All the other brands do that their watch costs so much to make, bullshit. But the idea is, if you made 2 watches a year and, the parts cost nothing. So, that would be your $200,000 salary. And that's pretty darn good. So quit lying and saying that, this watch really cost 100,000, 200,000, a dumb Richard Mille for $1 million. That's just stupid. And I can't appreciate a watch that's priced that stupidly. But to the Moser idea, I don't understand this collaboration. If you bought a Lamborghini, which is a nice car, and that might be giving Moser too much credit that they're a Lamborghini, but if you like Trix cereal, do you put a Trix cereal logo on your Lamborghini? I like Trix. I like Lamborghinis, but I don't want them together.
Oh,
Studio Underdog isn't.
territory.
They're not big enough. I mean, who cares? They're a little nothing brand. I don't want them on my Moser. They're
I think
dunking up my Moser.
I think it makes complete sense. So I'm kind of the other way around. I completely understand why Moser did this. If Moser are famous for being, sort of out there and inventive, and everyone talks about the Swiss Icon
cheese watch and the Icons
the
watch,
cheese watch and those sorts of things. But importantly, those are all a couple of years old. We haven't seen anything really interesting or exciting from Moser for probably 5 or 6 years. Ed Milan came in and his brother. We all talk about Ed, but there's the brothers. When they came in and overhauled Moser, and they did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
They were the young, I think they were 35, 36 years old, and the young Turks of the watch world, Well, that was 13, 14 years ago. They're 49 coming. They'll be 50 in a year or two. Just another set of 50-year-olds running watch companies. The Moser look is now 14, 15 years old. So I think Moser needs things like these collabs to keep the idea that they are a young, upstart, inventive, progressive brand going, to hide the fact that they're really still playing on games that they came out 14, 15 years ago, run by a couple of relatively straightforward 50-year-old Swiss blokes.
And that's kind of what I was saying when this came up last week, is that, I think one of the questions was, Moser got no sense of humor. And yet 6 years ago, when they did the Apple Watch, the Swiss cheese watch, and got in trouble for the Icons watch, they clearly had a sense of humor at one point, but it's gone away. They've got serious, boring, if you like. And, with the Studio Underdog, that gave them a chance to get, we've got a sense of humor. We know Studio Underdog with the pizza watch and the melon watch are a fun, humorous thing. And that's where we used to be, but we don't know how to do it anymore, or we can't do it anymore. Studio Underdog gave them a chance to do exactly what Pete said, is get that reputation for fun back.
How do you feel about watches where, we've talked about expensive watches, and you said Richard Mealpatrick, but discount them. They're rubbish. Forget about them. I feel. But how do you feel about independent watchmakers where they're making all the parts themselves? They're making all the parts, or assembling them themselves.
There are very, very few independent watchmakers.
There are very
making
few,
all the parts themselves.
Yeah, Cyril Nodo made his eccentricity. You got Bernard Lenoir. You got quite a few people. You got Roger Smith. You got Andreas Streyer. You've got quite a few.
These guys in there that was a fascinating documentary on. That makes all the parts.
Vianney Halter, people like that who are making got their own workshops where they make 95% of their own parts.
If it's a handmade watch and someone's really doing that, I think that obviously deserves a premium. I still think 100,000 is a little over premium. I don't know what those watches cost, but
you still have to like the watch.
Yeah, but for all of these people who just put their designs in a CAD machine and they CNC some plates and take a piece of wood and scrape the sides for a while and tell me how fancy they are, that does not equal, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 to me.
Yeah, because it's funny if it was a car, wouldn't it? Like if you got a 20,000, say you got a Tesla at 100,000 and you got a Bugatti or whatever at $1 million, there's like a massive performance between the two, isn't there? There's like engine performance and efficiencies and all of that. Whereas between a $1,000 watch and a $100,000 watch, the actual timekeeping of the watch, the performance isn't exponential.
Well, it probably goes. It's probably worse.
Yes,
buy a $50 G-Shock and a $50,000 Chapek, and I'll be backing the G-Shock every day to be the accurate watch.
Yeah, it's the Ferrari in terms of the line.
I wouldn't go so far as to say like Patrick's gone further than me in saying it actively angers him that they cost that much. I don't get angry about it, but I just feel removed from it.
I often find I'm disappointed by the $100,000 watches.
In the hand.
Because you look at them and there is almost a rule book for what a $100,000 watch has to look like. MB&F, Urwerk, HYT, accepted, because they just do the futurism stuff.
Yeah, and Jacob and Co. to a certain extent.
With some of them. But I'm generally disappointed with, this is a $100,000 watch. I don't get it because it looks like the next stall along on the trade show, their $100,000 watch. You know, irrespective of my visceral hatred for Roman numerals, which seem to be obligatory, irrespective of that, most of the time I can't see where the money went. And I'm not convinced that some guy sweating over hand turning a guilloche dial is worth that much more over somebody who's going to machine it. And yes, I know the skill has to be developed, and you've got to put the time and the sweat into it. But with very, very few exceptions, I go to these shows, and I go to the top end shows, and Watch Time in New York's a great example. I go every year, but I need a guide. I need someone there to tell me why I should appreciate it, because 99.9% of the time, on my own, I don't appreciate them. But very rarely something pops out, and Jacob and Co. with their marble moon phases, that popped out as something like, I get why that's expensive.
Well, Mark, you reminded me.
And I get the difference, but most of the time, I'm not angry. I'm angry at myself for perhaps not being one of the hype kids that gets it, but I'm also disappointed in the things I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, Mark, you reminded me of a story that is maybe the pillar of where the anger comes from, is because I hate it when people try to convince me that their price is appropriate. And there's a brand called J.N. Shapiro, and I liked him because he's American, and there aren't very many American watches. But now he's made his own movement, which is ungodly expensive, stupidly expensive. But before, he just made buy it cases, bought movements, but he would do the turning of the dial, and his watches were like $35,000. Like, dude, it's just cutting into a dial. You're giving me a $1,000 watch at most. That dial is not worth $25,000 plus. Like, cut it out. And that, as I said, that just annoys me beyond belief. And when he sent me a quote for a price, I mean, I virtually laughed to him in the comments. I go, really? And and then he came back at me and was all like sort of angry that I would question his cost. And I'm like, well, that's really expensive. And as I said, I feel like I'm on an island.
Well, yeah. So, should we just quick fire some questions before we go? So, Treble says, Pete, don't tell me I've wasted my entire life watching football.
That was me. And I won't tell you you've wasted your entire life watching football, because that would be wrong. But quite frankly, you have.
Hey, look, if you live in the UK and you've got some connection to those cities or whatever, great, go for your life. But I don't. So
it's funny.
Even when I lived in the UK, I didn't, because it's hard to be an Aston Villa supporter and have any pride.
I don't watch it when I'm in the US. I used to go and watch Bolton Wanderers. I always whenever I tell people I'm from Manchester over here, they're like, United or City, and I'm like, well, actually, there's like 25 teams. Cheadle, where I grew up, had a Cheadle Town Football Club, and Stockport County, of course, mighty Stockport County. Okay, so 3H says, question for the panel: how much do you think auctions contribute to the hype factor? They totally contribute to that.
Totally, yeah.
But also, they have an interesting job as well, don't they? Like, especially with the rarer watches, and they have a trouble making sure everything's authentic. They've definitely got themselves in.
They do a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah, they do a lot of work. Yeah. Let's have a look for. Let's see. Okay, so then Christian says people who collect what's popular end up taking a bath. Consolidating once the trend is over. Look at Chrono Tokyo and Ming's flooding the market. Same for all the Deco, Piaget, and Cartiers.
I think that's, if you want a really good example of what Christian's saying there is, and this is a point sorry, I'm going to bring up one of your favorite topics. Look at what happened when Hodinkee tried to sell their last remaining stocks of a few limited editions.
Yeah.
At the time, those watches sold super fast and people couldn't wait to get hold of them, and they were really hyped. For whatever reason, Hodinkee kept a few back, probably because, I suspect, because they wanted to be able to hand them out to friends and family in years to come, probably set up a display in their aborted bricks and mortar store.
Yeah, new office.
And then, but when the hype's gone, when everything's, everyone's sort of settled down and looked at these watches, they immediately sell at 30, 40, 50% discounts. And I think that's exactly what Christian's talking about. You get these watches who, at a moment, the hype is there and they bubble up and they become super valuable. But then as soon as that hype is gone, you see the true value. Not to bash on Tudor, but you see the same thing happen with Tudor watches. They become super popular for a hot minute. They sell over retail, and then 3 months later, they're just with everyone else.
Yeah, what's the expression? When the tide goes out, you see who's wearing swimming trunks or not. Is that there's like an expression like that, isn't there?
Never heard that.
Yeah, I agree actually, because that Ed Sheeran one, they held out at 185 for ages, didn't they? And we talked about it on the thing, and they're like, "Oh no, 185." Everything else was getting, thrown. Everything else was getting thrown out the ship before it was sinking. But like, no, and then suddenly one email, boom, they were like $50 or something. I had to laugh. I took a screenshot of it, but so cool. Well, any final thoughts? We are at our hour, but any final thoughts from the panel? That actually was a really good. Yeah, thanks for the topic, Pete.
Well, the man with 3 H's is saying you won't be disappointed with the Simon Brett chronometer artisans. Traditional watchmaking never dies. Yeah, I met Simon Brett in Ireland last year, and I've handled that watch and did absolutely gorgeous. Traditional watchmaking will never die.
But you put a tweed strap on a watch, Tom, so I'm not going to question your taste. You will never be forgiven for that crime.
Put on it.
I hope that traditional watchmaking never dies. Man with 3 H's.
Oh, I don't think it'll die, and I don't want it to die. It's just I don't like most of it.
I suppose I'll come at it from a slightly different point of view. I'm unfussed by the making. I don't care about the making. If you've got a machine that will do something, why make it harder for yourself by doing it by hand? I'd much I had an interesting discussion with someone one day about if you could get a Dufour that was unique and special and unlike anything else, designed by Philippe Dufour, or you could get something that was relatively straightforward and conventional and fundamentally looked like every other watch, but was made by Philippe Dufour, which would you want? Do you want the unique design, or do you want the unique manufacture? And I think that's where the community splits. I don't care who made it. I care who designed it.
I'd be more on the design point myself.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why Dufour simplicity really leaves me cold. It's just like, yeah, congratulations. It's a beautifully made watch that could have been designed by almost anyone.
Yeah, interesting.
Right.
There you go. Well, on that bombshell, a big thanks to everyone that joined. Thank you so much. I think we had nearly 60 people watching live. Very much appreciated. Big thanks to the panel, some returning guests, and we will see you next week on Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. Thanks, everyone.
Take care,
everyone.
See you next time.